Hello and welcome to this special broadcast. Now, it is the belief of the government and of course of the Indian Air Force that India, in order to secure its skies, needs about 42 squadrons of aircraft, and I'm referring of course to fighter planes, of which each squadron should have about 18 odd jets. Now, in reality, India just has about 33 squadrons as on date, of which 11 are of legacy aircrafts like the MiG-21s and the MiG-27s, which of course have almost outlived their utility. So quite frankly, a crisis does exist. Every crisis is also an opportunity, isn't it? And our first story concerns the evolution of the light combat aircraft TEJAS, a time-taking, a painful answer that India found, fortunately, from within. "11 years after its design was completed and nearly 2 decades after India laid to rest her first self-made fighter, the HF-24 Marut, this small tailless fighter, then only known as light combat aircraft, took to the skies in Bangalore for the very first time. It was 10:18 on the morning of the 4th of January 2001 in its 18-minute-long flight, where the landing gear was not pulled up as is the norm. Every move was mapped and hailed by the who's who. Thereon, it took the TEJAS, a name given by former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 2003, 15 long years to formally enter service with the Indian Air Force. After hundreds of revisions, nearly 3,500 trial flights and a total developmental cost in excess of Rs 8,000 crore, the light combat aircraft TEJAS is finally here and is sure to stay. The Indian Air Force over the next decade will induct nearly 123 light combat aircraft TEJAS of varying configurations to replace as many MiG-21s which now have to retire. In what can only be described as a display of supreme confidence in the aircraft and the ability of the test pilots, the Defence Ministry finally allowed India today the opportunity to become among the first national broadcasters to get to the coveted rear seat of the TEJAS and take a flight. So as you can see, we are ready to board the light combat aircraft TEJAS, and I just want to very quickly show you what we're going to wear. Now I'm wearing my regular stuff, but now I'm going to change into this jumpsuit. As you can see, there are gloves out there, and these are the shoes. Apart from all of this, we'll also be aided with a G-suit so that we can take the gravitational pull and the forces. Apart from that, there'll be a life vest and of course a helmet and a mask. Like with everything else on a fighter, even the material of the jumpsuit had a contribution to make.
This product is flame retardant, which because in case of any emergency in the cockpit, this reduces the flame catchability quotient.
So the pilot is safe.
That pilot is safe. So it doesn't stick to the skin. So that is one of the products. Second thing is we have the gloves. Okay. We have a flame retardant gloves.
I then interacted with my flight commander, Air Vice Marshal AP Singh, who has under his belt over 4,700 hours of flying over 30 different aircraft. A man whose job sees him and his colleagues surmount immeasurable risk, a man who would put you at ease with his smile, Singh then proceeded to the pre-flight briefing.
Somebody else is flying, I may feel uncomfortable. True. Especially if you're looking somewhere and a maneuver. It's like in a car, you're reading something, you suddenly feel nauseatic. It's the same. Your sensory organs are telling you something else. Eyes are telling you something altogether. Eyes are telling you something else. So there's a conflict in your mind, and that's what gives you that vertigo.
Done with the kitting up and pre-flight briefing, we walked up to our TEJAS numbered KHT 2009 parked on the tarmac. Before seeking the traffic controller's nod, it was time for a quick yet thorough checkup on the systems within using the indigenous digital flight control system. Given the ever-expanding software footprint, the flight control system has an unenviable task, that of examining and okaying each system within. That job done, we parked ourselves at the designated takeoff zone. The Tejas is set to take off in more ways than one, and few know and understand matters better than Dr. S. Christopher, the man at the helm of India's Defence Research and Development Organisation.
It is indeed our endeavour that should be a pilot aircraft, and it is excellently happening. One is that even given the design, if it is produced consistently with the quality, I am sure the reliability will be improved. On the other hand, there is a room for design improvement. The concern in terms of the designer, the number of people that we have as a designer is certainly small. The other aspect is funding. Unless otherwise we have a long-term funding, in the sense we must believe that we will succeed. We have taken some time. The next version is bound to have a faster return.
Back on the runway at the Yelahanka Air Force Base, powered by the imported GEF 404 F2J3 engine, Tejas 3, as the controller termed us, took only 10 seconds and a speed of 120 nautical miles per hour to lift off. Early into the flight, AVM Singh offered me the control. He guided me as we, over 30 minutes, climbed 6 kilometers from the ground, underwent aerobatics pulling up G-force of over 5. And then it was time for some negative G. With a stroke of the joystick, we were flying inverted with our head facing the ground. For the next 15 seconds, we pulled up negative G up to 1.5, said to be the more unsettling of the two. Our time in the air was now running out, and we began our descent towards Yelahanka, touching down just in time. The light combat aircraft Tejas finds itself in a unique position. While it is a part of an operational squadron of the Indian Air Force, which is incidentally based out of Bengaluru, the Air Force itself wants a higher and upgraded version of the Tejas. They want the Tejas Mark 1A. The Navy also has Mark 1, but they want the second version, which is more powerful. And that's the reason why I say the Tejas is in a unique position. It isn't a part of the Air Force, it isn't a part of the Navy, it isn't also a part of the DRDO completely. In fact, it is now being handled by an agency called the ADA, as well as people from the National Flight Test Center. In this segment, we make you meet those who are handling this bird for now.
First that stands apart is the indigenous design, our own design. We have worked on it for last almost 20 years now. And it's a fully automatic digital fly-by-wire. In this, we have an open architecture software. That means it has got, we can plug and play sort of a system where we can buy any equipment from outside or develop a separate equipment and thereafter integrate it to our system.
Very few know and realize the Tejas, as a platform built from the scratch, has actually had no serious accident, which is a remarkable feat for a developing aircraft. These test engineers are the ones who lead that effort.
Our job is to monitor and make sure that nothing is going wrong on the aircraft during the test phase. We have flown something like 3,500 sorties as of now, typically about 2,500 hours. So, a process, as I told you, we have multiple levels of supervision. Every flight, the data is mythed out and it is seen in detail.
Building and nurturing a team is something that C.D. Balaji, a naval engineer who today heads the ADA, knows only too well. His association with the TEJAS program is now more than 12 years old.
We used to always, even in lead up to various air shows or lead up to various activities, there was always a negative feelings that would come out. And I guess today, a significant amount of negativism has come down, and probably we see positivity. Last January, we went to the Bahrain Air Show, and that probably started the journey of a little change in the mindsets, where we took the aircraft to its limits.
One charge thrown very often at the fighter jet has been that it lacks a proper weaponization plan. We decided to check it out for ourselves, and helping us there was Group Captain Himanshu Upadhyay.
This aircraft in its present form is fully weapon capable. So if you are seeing whatever the stores are there on the present aircraft, we have already fired the missiles, we have done the air to ground missions, we have dropped the bombs. The laser designation pod, which you see on the black one, through which you have a clear picture while in day or in night of the target to be attacked.
Though fast, powerful and now proven, the Tejas for the Indian Air Force isn't there just yet. Air-to-air refueling, which can allow an extended period of operations for a fighter, the all-important ISR radar, self-protection jammer are among the few measures which remain reserved for later versions. Another area the Air Force is ill at ease is the aspect of reliability and maintenance. Depending on the perspective that you deploy, the glass can be half full, it can be half empty as well. But what cannot change with perspectives is the fact that India's stepping stone, its entry ticket into the big league of world's fighter aircraft manufacturers, has indeed arrived. And while it has taken, of course, a long time in covering the distance that it is finally here and it is flying. Welcome back. Now there is excitement in the air as India looks to marry her necessity with creating and milking of an opportunity. This report has more. The light combat aircraft Tejas may have arrived to stem the Air Force's dwindling fleet of fighters, but it will not be enough, as most, if not all, will merely end up replacing the older planes. As such, being a light aircraft, the Air Force believes there are roles it can do and there are roles it can't. At the other end of the spectrum, the Air Force is well equipped in the heavy bomber segment with over 200 Sukhoi 30 MKI jets. That is why it is the medium segment where the IAF is seeking numbers. That is where these birds come in. In the last week of December 2016, the Indian Air Force Chief said that his force would require anywhere between 200 to 250 fighter planes over the next decade if the Indian Air Force has to remain relevant in a two-front war vis-a-vis China and Pakistan. Even though as of now the road ahead is far from clear, the very weight of the Air Chief's words has drawn companies into making one-sided offers. Among them is the Swedish firm Saab, which recently came to India with 3 of its GRIPEN fighters. India Today is reporting from inside the Yelahanka Air Force Station on the outskirts of Bengaluru, and the aircraft that you see in the air as well as the one behind me is the Swedish GRIPEN. Now, this aircraft isn't here merely to participate in the Aero India. It's also here to attract the Indian Air Force's attention. It is also here so as to become a part of the equipment of the Indian Air Force. Just what is the GRIPEN all about? What does it bring? What it does not? India Today is the first and the only national broadcaster to get access not just around, not just on, but actually take a flight on board the GRIPEN aircraft. Weeks before I or the aircraft arrived at the scene, there were medical checks I had to undergo. These checks done here had to be approved in Sweden, where Saab is based out of. Those efforts done already, I kitted up in a 13-kilogram suit consisting of the helmet, jumpsuit, G-suit, a life vest, and was given lessons one may just have to use in case Lady Luck ran out.
Air to air in the same missions. So I will show you how we switch between these different.
Lead pilot and flight commander Captain Frederick gave me a glimpse of what it is like to be a fighter pilot. After climbing up to 20,000 feet, almost at the speed of sound, we took the single-engine aircraft through a series of maneuvers which involved barrel roll, looping, executing a split S and a vertical climb, all of which have relevance even in combat. In the process, we attracted G-forces up to the 7th level, beyond which the flight commander would not allow me any further. As we did that, I was also shown the functioning of the radar in the air-to-air, air-to-ground and the reconnaissance mode.
5-6, heading tape on top, turn left, go to 240.
The ability of the GRIPEN to network and then hunt as a part of a pack made it a class apart, I was told. For the first timer that I was, the impact of the flying, the computing and of course undergoing G-forces all at once was a feeling of being sapped. My untrained body and mind had undergone so much stress that it left me feeling tired, and we had not even flown for 40 minutes. Flying a fighter, an unstable platform at heart, is as much about skill as it is about the ability to endure physical and mental challenges all alone and give it back to the enemy using a cool, computing mind. Once on the ground, I was keen to understand the aircraft better. My commander decided to take me around and describe each system as it appeared.
This is the petrol tube, where we measure the altitude and the speed and so on. By measuring air pressure, static and dynamic pressure. Okay. This is a radome, in which behind we have the Ericsson radar that we had a look at today. Yes. Yeah. And I'm very happy with that one as a pilot. The radar is very effective. It has a very long range for us, especially in the air-to-air mode. And as a pilot, the interface and the way the radar works, it's very much automatic regarding the lock-on procedure. The aircraft is controlled by the computer, and I give the inputs from the cockpit, telling the aircraft I want to make this turn, for example, and then the aircraft affects what I'm ordering. So it's a very modern aircraft with a pretty complex flight control system, I would say.
Fighter aircraft constitute the teeth of any air force, and the technical configurations as well as the weapons carrying capacity actually constitute the teeth of any fighter plane. In this segment, we'll try and explain to you just what is it after all that the GRIPEN brings to the Indian Air Force's armory. A fighter built on the premise of being forever open to upgrades and improvements, this is the GRIPEN D aircraft, but what is on offer to India is the next generation GRIPEN, the GRIPEN E. With a maximum takeoff weight of 16.5 tons, the E version of the GRIPEN is under evolution with its first flight likely this year. However, makers say Sweden and Brazil have already signed up, whereas the earlier version is in service with forces in Sweden, Brazil, South Africa, Thailand, Hungary and the Czech Republic. The makers are also offering the Meteor missile, the Advanced Active Electronic Scanned Array Radar or the ISR radar, which can simultaneously and independently track multiple targets and other features which the manufacturers believe will give the Air Force the punch it seeks. To top it up, all of this comes with the promise to make the aircraft here in India.
The capability, the knowledge overall in India, it's very high. You have good engineers, you also have a good tradition and good competence when it comes to aviation. And of course, building up such an ecosystem with suppliers and building up the production and the design, what we offer, you're talking about tens of thousands employees.
With the requirement, the proverbial ball has also been in India's court for a while now. The Air Force and the Defence Ministry are expected to flesh out the procedure to acquire these newer jets sooner than later. For now, of course, the courtship will continue. We've known this aircraft and today we've flown this aircraft, yet we do not think we are qualified to endorse A over B. It is the job of the Indian Air Force and it is the most suited, the most competent organization in the country to evaluate. What we can say, of course, is what the manufacturer of the GRIPEN, that is Saab, tells us. It says that should the Indian Air Force and the Indian government decide to go in for the GRIPEN, it is willing to offer terms which are unparalleled. It is willing to transfer technology, it is willing to set up an entirely new production line, and of course it is willing to ensure that the GRIPEN remains in India's skies, securing our national interests at least for the next 30 years, if not more. Before we conclude, we've put together some of the finest highlights of what unfolded at Aero India 2017, so sit back and enjoy. It began as an improved version of a small, privately handled air show titled Avia India, which was held in December 1993. From a time when few were willing to pitch a tent, today there is hardly anyone who wants to remain out. This time, unlike ever in the past, the skies were dominated by Indian aircraft. Then was the turn of the light combat aircraft TEJAS, which looks to shift increasingly from a delayed piece of indigenous acquisition to an object of pride in the journey towards self-reliance.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a huge round of applause to our very own Made in India light combat aircraft TEJAS.
Following closely was the self-made light combat helicopter, which will soon be inducted into the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army. Then came the light utility helicopter, a piece of hardware eagerly awaited by the armed forces. India also showcased the self-developed basic trainer aircraft HTT-40, which will also be used to train thousands of young pilots. Then came the delayed intermediate jet trainer as well as the indigenously upgraded Hawk trainer or the Hawk-Eye. At the end of the array was the Made in India version of the mighty bomber, the Russian Su-30 MKI. Close on the heels of the Swadeshi effort were foreign manufacturers with their wares, which included the Swedish GRIPEN C fighter aircraft. Similar is the story of this, the legendary American F-16 Fighting Falcon, which is in service with as many as 28 nations. The birds of war then gave space to smaller, glistening aircraft like the Yakovlevs. Right next was the Scandinavian air show, popularly known as Skycats, where wing walkers carry on their show mid-air even as pilots carry on with theirs. The Suryakiran team, resurgent and still evolving with its brand new Hawk trainer aircraft, and of course the Sarang display team, propelled by the Indian advanced light helicopter Dhruv. Hardly a surprise that nearly 6 lakh people attended the 5-day extravaganza, and the roads in the city had little space for anyone to drive. Now, we aren't, of course, in the business of predicting the future, but we've tried to give you a sense of what is unfolding today, of course, with an eye on tomorrow. As we depart, we hope we were able to contribute to your understanding in some small way at least. Thank you for watching. Goodbye and Jai Hind.